Hello guys and welcome to Daddy Share Space. So here I am beginning the work on the front brakes on my 2003 Dodge Ram 1500. Just a small backstory. So a few weeks ago on my annuals I actually requested a Friday off, and a few weeks ago that Friday came up. So I was really looking forward to getting into the wood shop and doing some kind of a project or so, and advancing my woodworking skills. Unfortunately, on that Thursday night on my way home, I started to hear my brakes scraping. So obviously, having to choose the responsible road over the road that you would like to travel, I got up on Friday morning and I took my 91 Saab to AutoZone to go pick up some brake pads for this vehicle. Now, I was hoping that this job would be just as straightforward, remove the pads and put on new pads and go forth. However, as you'll see in this video, it actually became quite the challenge, and as a result, it ended up taking up my whole weekend, unfortunately. And there are several reasons why, but it is what it is. It's in the past now, so it's behind me. But every time I go to do a DIY task, I learned a little bit more about whatever it is that I'm doing. Now, doing brakes and auto mechanic jobs on your own it can save you money. And sometimes you can end up spending a little bit more money. But the way that it saves you money, obviously, is the parts are typically cheaper if you get them from a place like AutoZone. And more than likely, if you're doing the work yourself, you're not charging by the hour. So that's how you can keep your costs down. Now, it can end up costing you more money when either A, you damage the parts that you buy and you have to buy more parts, or B, you don't know what you're doing and you actually obviously damage parts that maybe you weren't even supposed to be touching. So in that way you could end up paying more. But I do find that as a whole it really takes a lot for you to actually outspend paying a professional to do something like this brake job. Now, I looked it up, and it was probably, I think it costs about $350 to $400. No, I think it's $350 to $800, if I'm not mistaken, per axle to change your brakes. So what does that entail? $350, that lower end, I'm thinking that's simply just removing your pads and replacing new pads. Now, if you go to a place like AutoZone, you can buy lifetime warranty pads from 50 to, I don't know, maybe 70, 80 bucks. So if you possess the tools and the skill to replace them, you would pay that 50 to 80 bucks for pads, and you would be done basically for the lifetime of your vehicle, versus paying $300, $350 every time you change your brake pads, which obviously is not a deal. Now, when you get up into that $500, $800 per axle brake change, now you're talking about the changing of calipers and rotors and all of this type of stuff. And for my truck, the rotors, they come in at about, I want to say $90 a piece. Well, no, I actually got the 3-year rotors, so that's going to be about a little bit over $100 a piece. And since I'm just doing the front, that's 200 bucks, just over. And then the calipers themselves weren't that bad. I want to say they were about 70 bucks, maybe 80 bucks. And then they had a $20 core charge as well. And since I turned the core in, obviously I was able to get that $20 back. So let's say 160 plus 200, that's 360, plus the pads at about 70 bucks. You're talking about 330 if my math is fairly close. So what does that say? 260 plus 70, about 310, something like that. Anyways, it's still less than that 350, and that's for everything being changed on the front part of your vehicle. That's New rotors with a 3-year warranty, which means if they go bad in 3 years, you get replacements. And the calipers are actually lifetime, so you'll never have to buy those again as long as you own your vehicle. Likewise, your pads, lifetime. I often wonder if a lot of these auto body or these auto repair stores, if they in fact go to places like O'Reilly or AutoZone and buy these lifetime warranty parts and keep records for your particular vehicle, and actually keep that receipt on file, so that if you go back there, if you actually are one of those consumers that are faithful to one particular auto mechanic, if they actually have that on file, and then they basically charge you the same price for the job as if they were buying all the parts new. If that's the case, that would be pretty egregious. I just always wondered. I can't prove it. I don't know. I'm not behind the scenes, but it's something I thought about. Now, you can see here I'm using this brake compression tool, which I bought, or a caliper compression tool on Amazon for about 50 bucks. I went to my local Napa and they had one on the shelf for 65. And the guy was like, you want me to pull it down off the shelf, for me to purchase it? And then when I look right there on my phone and I see that Amazon was able to ship the device that same day, and it was like 20-something% off, which made it 50 bucks. I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. So I just ordered the part and waited for it to come, and it did come same day, which was cool. And it actually worked quite well. However, I wasn't able to determine that it worked that well on this particular job because I ended up running into a problem on this brake job. And that problem was I went into AutoZone. I completely forgot that I had purchased lifetime warranty brakes for this vehicle. And I just told the guy, hey, I gave the numbers to my vehicle to the guy at the store. And I said I need front brakes, front and rear. I bought both of them. And he asked me which ones I wanted. I chose the ones that were like 47, 50 bucks, something like that. He brought them out. I brought them home. Pulled off the calipers, depressed the calipers with the caliper tool. And as you see here, I cannot get the caliper back on. And so even though I bought that brake compression tool, I ended up breaking down and pulling out the C-clamp, the old method that I used to use, just because I was thinking maybe that compression tool was not working properly. However, after finagling with this and messing around with it and actually getting frustrated, eventually I stopped working on it on day one, which would have been the Friday, the actual day off that I was supposed to have. I spent most of it working on this vehicle. And I even took a rubber mallet to it at one point in time, trying to get it to just, to get it on there, and ended up damaging a portion of one of the brake pads, which basically obviously makes them unreturnable. But you live, you learn. And so I decided to just put a pause on what I was doing for the day. And I said, you know what, I'm going to come back tomorrow, which would have been a Saturday, and just start with the fresh head of steam. So since I decided to do that, I just basically put the old brake pads back on, just so I could put the calipers on, and then I put the wheels back on and lowered the car to the ground and waited till Saturday to come back to start back on the job. Now, I actually had done like a little bit of a vlog as I was driving to the auto parts store. However, for whatever reason, the audio did not record with my GoPro, so I did not have that footage. It was actually raining pretty good when I was driving there too, so I was going to show the fact that like right here in this portion of the video, everything's looking all dry and nice, but it was actually forecasted to rain on this day. And later in the day, it actually came to fruition. Very frustrating, the fact that you start off thinking that you're going to be doing something that you want to do, and you end up doing something that you have to do, which is, it is what it is. So here you see me putting the caliper back on. Or am I still trying to? Yeah, I think I'm still trying to get it to work at this point in time. And yeah, you see the C-clamp that I pull out, trying to, I was thinking maybe that compression tool was overhyped. But once I pulled out the C-clamp, I was not able to depress the piston any further than I was with the hand pump compression tool. So there is that. Anyways, personally, I do recommend men and women to both to do your best to try to learn how to manage your vehicle to the best of your abilities. You may not be able to do everything, but anything that you can do yourself on your vehicle is going to save you, a decent amount of money so that you can, redeploy those assets in a different way, whether it be saving towards retirement, saving, having a rainy day fund, or for saving up for something that you're just not going to be able to tackle yourself. So, for me, I'm always trying to think ahead and think about, when I'm doing something like this, a DIY type of job. Number one, I'm learning, I'm growing. So I know that if I'm talking to someone that is a professional, if I know a little bit about what I'm dealing with, then I can kind of ascertain as to whether that person is trying to manipulate me better than if I'm completely oblivious to what's going on. That, if I don't know anything about the task, the person can tell me anything and then I'll just fall for it because I have no reference. So I actually know a guy that at one point in time, he worked on his car all the time. And one day he decided, he didn't feel like putting a fuel filter on his vehicle. And so he took it into, I don't know if it was the dealership or just some other kind of mechanic to do it. And the person quoted him a price and he said, wow, that's a lot of money. Why is it so expensive? And the guy told him it was because of the location of the fuel filter. And he said, so you mean right up under this door? That's a difficult location. And the guy got angry with him and shouted and told him to get out of there. So, some of these business individuals, these professionals, can sometimes not be the most honest individuals. And it's understandable. We live in a capitalist society. I don't speak one way or the other when you start talking about capitalism and all that. I'm not really into things like that. But what I will say is that when you think about it, if you're running a business and let's say you need 10 customers to pay full price over the course of 30 days to pay your bills, well then it's advantageous of you to get those 10 customers to pay full price. If you get close to the end of the month and you've only had 2 customers, if you are a person that lacks a lot of integrity, you're going to try to get those last few customers in that month to pay as much as possible to compensate your lifestyle. And a lot of things that we have in our free market are like that. It's kind of like, it's not just about supply and demand. It's also about, if I have a company and I want to live a certain lifestyle, and if I'm not getting enough customers through the door, I need to make my prices a lot higher or come up with other ways to try to get a consumer to part with their money. And it's, obviously it's worse if you need it. If you don't need the service, you can walk away. But you can't drive your car with no brakes. So once your car is up on their rack, then you're at their mercy when it comes to getting it fixed. So you kind of got to go with the flow. So you can see here I'm beating on the back of this brake because I bent it when I tried to jam it in there. And this is the point to where I basically said, you know what, forget it. I need to wrap it up, for today before I actually, damage something that either I can't fix or that's going to cause a greater impact to my financial budget. So here I'm putting the tires back on. And, I'll live to see another day regarding this portion of the repair. So again, my goal was basically to just jump in, get this done on Friday, and then try to, get the rest of my weekend to get in the wood shop. Unfortunately, I ended up having to punt it to the following day. And you see me here using my 1/2 inch impact having tools like this in the shop is super nice to have because it just makes the heavy lifting jobs a lot easier. Now earlier you saw me removing the tire with the tire iron, and that was only because it was a little early in the day. I mean, it was about 9 o'clock, but I just didn't feel like making all that noise using the impact, so I used the manual ratchet. But as time went on, obviously I pulled out my impact, and all's fair when it's the middle of the day as far as making a little bit of noise when you're fixing your vehicle. And I was thinking I have to look and see if they actually have some kind of a wheel dolly, something that you can put these wheels on that would actually raise them up and down to make it easier to put these tires on. Because I can imagine, I'm a smaller guy, and I can imagine as I get older, it's going to get harder and harder to lift these wheels on and off of the truck. Luckily, I have enough health to do it now, but I don't know if they actually make some kind of small dolly that you can put underneath the wheel that has wheels on it, and that can elevate up and down so that you can just line up the spin the wheel on the dolly and then line it up to get those tires in place. If they don't have one of those, somebody should invent it anyway. So all right guys, let's get this tire on, and then we will start Saturday. Let's see what we have. So here is a little bit of footage. This is when I actually bought this torque ratchet. This is the one that I think it's 12 foot-pounds or something, all the way up to 250 foot-pounds. I bought it because I wanted to get this brake job, everything tightened up to torque specs as opposed to just a bit past tight. And since it was on sale at Harbor Freight, I went ahead and picked it up. And just here I'm just unboxing it, getting it all set up to be able to use. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when I picked this up, I actually picked up the other components for this job, that being the rotors and calipers for the vehicle. So right now I'm just getting this out, getting familiar with it, trying to figure out where the batteries go. Once I get those installed, then I plan on using it on this brake job. I think I mentioned in a video before, the reason why I went with the digital wrench was because I like the idea of having the audible, to be able to digitally set your value. Now, I don't have a way in my shop to actually test the accuracy of this device, but it did come with a certificate saying it's within 3% plus or minus. And so, it's at least going to get me into the torque range, and 3% plus or minus is pretty good. Now, it would be nice if I had a way within my own shop to test the accuracy of that. But for right now, I guess with certain aspects of life, you do have to have a little bit of faith. And regarding this, that's what I'm going to do, because even if I were to use my mechanical ones, the ones with no digital technology in them, there is a chance that they could be miscalibrated as well as this one. But this one just kind of makes it just a little bit more easy, just because you just set it digitally, and then also you can switch between the different methods of measurement, as opposed to the manual ones I have, which only have like 2 different settings on each torque wrench. So I am going to proceed here. I think in this next clip, I'll be talking about the actual parts and components that I actually purchased to get this, to basically to put on with this brake job. So let me let that part roll. So in working on all this, what I ended up picking up a digital torque wrench from Harbor Freight. I was going to buy the Milwaukee one a long time ago, but I find for the price, and just reading up on the calibration and what you have to do to kind of get it to work, I just didn't feel like that was a very economic solution. So I went ahead and bought the Harbor Freight one, and the Harbor Freight one actually has the ability to, well, obviously I bought the little warranty, so it's covered for 2 years, but I also got like $30 off because I'm like a member there at Harbor Freight, so I'm gonna do that. It's just gonna give me the digital feature. I do have the Harbor Freight manual torque wrenches. Right here I have a 1/2 inch, and there I have a 1/4 inch. I didn't want to spend all the money today, or else I would have bought the smaller torque wrench as well, but I'll do that in the future. Mainly, I'm just kind of trying to get myself in the range of what I needed to be into to get this done. So, been using my 1/2 inch impact here, my ratchet, that's my 3/8, and then there's my 1/4 inch. The only Milwaukee ratchet that I don't have is the 1/2 inch, which I'm not going to buy the 1/2 inch because I think I'm going to get the insider ratchet and then get the insert, and that'll cover me for all of that. And I'm actually considering driving to this store. It's about 40 minutes away to pick up the insider ratchet today because they seem to have it in stock. So over here I have the regular 3/8 ratchet, and then I've got my other impacts here. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this all done. So as you can see, it is kind of raining. It was raining a little bit heavier than it is now, but it's still raining, and I need to finish fixing these brakes. So I purchased new calipers and also rotors. I still got to go get my brake pads because I forgot to take them. I forgot to take my brake pads in to get the warrantied out solution. You see I got it up on jack stands here, and in the back I'm using these little ramps as stops. So unfortunately I'm going to have to do this in the rain and in the wet. I'm not happy about that, but I need to get this done, and I don't want to waste. I've already wasted all of Friday fooling with this, and now I'm going to have to do wasting time on Saturday. So this here is the device that I purchased to compress the caliper. It worked pretty well. And then there's my clamp, or the mount for the passenger side or driver side. This is the mount for the passenger side. I've got my bolts here. These are for the driver side, passenger side there. I've got my 1/4 inch ratchet there. So let's see if we can get this all done. So here I have the replacement rotors that I'm going to be installing. These are the high carbon steel, deliver maximum heat dissipation, fully coated for superior rust protection, high carbon formulation. So we'll go ahead and open that up and see what it looks like. All right, so let's open this up. Got a little bit of literature here. This is a Duralast Gold rotor break-in information. Coating will be removed by pad friction material when the brakes are applied. Will not adhere to your brake pads. Limited noise is possible during break-in process. So one of the things I ended up realizing during this brake change, so day one I had a lot of problems, and the reason why I had a lot of problems is when I went in, as I may have mentioned before, I didn't remember that I had already bought brakes for this truck. So I asked the attendant at AutoZone, and they sold me brakes. I got them home, and I was wrestling around with it, and the reality of the matter was they didn't fit. And so I ended up damaging the brakes, trying to get them to fit. And since I damaged them, obviously I couldn't return them, not in good faith. When I remembered that I had actually had that I had purchased pads before, And this is when I decided, well, after I took off the passenger side, I realized that I was going to have to replace the rotor because I didn't realize the rotor was damaged. On the driver's side, it wasn't damaged. So once I realized I was going to have to replace the rotor, I remembered that I was also going to have, that I possibly had brake pads already that I had bought that were under warranty. So I got up there to AutoZone. They confirmed that I did have brake pads that were under warranty, and it was actually a different type of brake altogether. So the whole day one experiment, I probably, well, I would have needed to have bought rotors unless I wanted to use the bad rotor, which is probably not the best idea, obviously. But if I would have got the right brakes when I initially asked the gentleman, I probably would have still put it together and just went with it because it is an older vehicle, and as long as it's stopping, it's stopping. But since I got to the passenger side, I realized that the brakes were metal on metal. Instead of having my brakes prematurely wear, I went ahead and decided I'll just get new rotors and also new calipers, because I was, at this point, I was honestly thinking that the brake pads weren't fitting because it was something I was doing wrong with the calipers. Well, what I ended up discovering is that it was not the calipers, and that it was not anything with the rotors, but rather somehow or another the brake pad that was sold to me initially, it was not the right brake pad. So when I did the warranty exchange, I brought those brake pads home and they fit perfectly fine. So day one was a complete mess because of that. And then, as I got home with the proper components, and I was hoping to get everything done on that Saturday. However, I had intermittent rain, and so whenever it was raining a bit too heavy, I was not actually working on the vehicle. And obviously I had to run back and forth to the store on a couple occasions. When I when I went up to go get my rotors and also my calipers, I forgot to pack up my old brake pads. So I got home, I installed the rotors, I installed the brake calipers and the actual new brackets for the calipers, and got it all in place. But I could not finish the job because I had to get back in the car, go back up to AutoZone with my old brake pads for them to do the exchange. Now, when I did the exchange, just if you're not familiar with this, they actually keep the new box and they just dump out the new brakes for you to take. And they take your old brake pads and they put them in the box, and and they do whatever they do to recycle them or whatever it is that they do. So once I got home with the regular brake pads, obviously I put them in place, and I moved forward with the whole job. Now, as I was mentioning before, I purchased the torque wrench from Harbor Freight, but I didn't buy the smaller version of it. Now, in this video, as you'll see towards the end of it, I put on the, first I put on the older brake caliper brackets. I put those back on after I did the rotors. And I ended up learning when I opened up the calipers, obviously, that they come with the actual bracket. So I took the old brackets off and put the new brackets on, and then I installed the new calipers, and that had me ready to go ahead and go back and get the brakes so that I can install them. Now, I used the smaller torque wrench, and you'll see that towards the end of this video, to try to tighten down the, I believe it was the caliper to the bracket. And as I was tightening it, I was, I thought I had it set to 20 foot-pounds, which is, I believe, what the specs say. And I'm tightening it, and it just seems like it's really tight. And you'll see me in the video kind of looking at the torque wrench, to make sure I have the settings right. So I kept tightening, and I kept tightening, and I actually snapped the bolt off the head. And of course, after that happened, I was pretty frustrated about that. I mean, like I said, this was the brake job from hell, and it has been a while since I had to change the brakes. So one of the downfalls to not being a professional, if you are a professional, that's what you make your living doing, so you do it every day. Similar to with me being a registered nurse, every day I'm putting in IVs. If you as a person, if you as an individual was to try to put in an IV, you may have some difficulties doing it, especially if there's a long period of time in between you doing it. Like say if you do a bunch in a day or a bunch in a week, you may progressively get better at putting in IVs and be comparable to someone who does it on a regular basis. But if you go any length of time not doing that, and I guess that's the reason why in a lot of different professions you have what's called continuing education to continue to keep you sharp within your industry. And since brake jobs don't need to be done, not even as often as, say, oil changes and tune-ups, I often have to kind of refresh myself to the whole process. I often have to basically kind of reorient myself to the process so that I don't damage anything. And as a result, sometimes I have little bumps and bruises, or sometimes it may take me a little bit longer to do a particular action. And it's just the nature of the beast. Now, for myself, I kind of feel like I'm patient enough to go ahead and go through those challenges. I have thought to myself in the past about doing something like what I'm doing here, where you record a video, like make your own instructional video so you can kind of refresh yourself on how to do things, whether it be an oil change, brake change, tune up, so that you can continue to keep yourself in the loop for doing jobs like this, so that you could do it in a more efficient fashion. Because clearly, if I was willing to pay, say, let's say it would have cost me $500 to $800 to get this truck fixed, they would have done it, in less than a day. Now, for me, unfortunately, it took my extra day off and my whole weekend, portions of my whole weekend. Now, that's including being rained out at different occasions to get this job done. And so, you have to weigh out the option. What's better, time or money? All right, as you can see, I have both of the rotors in place, calipers, new brackets installed on both sides. All I need to do is go get the pads, because I forgot to take my old pads so that I could get them replaced. So let's go do that. So right here is what caused the issue. You can see right there it's worn down. If you look at the side of the pad there, it's worn down, so it's metal on metal grinding. You can see the other portion of the pad, it's not quite as bad like this one right here, so it's like some uneven wear. So that's what made me have to replace the rotors as well. So, but since these have a lifetime warranty, I'm just going to take them up to AutoZone and I'm going to get them replaced. So anyways, when you're, trying to, save money, there's so many different ways to go about saving money. One of them is obviously just to limit your expenses. Another one, you can save more money if you make more money, obviously, and you're disciplined. But the way that our at least here in America, the way things function in society is, my wife and I were talking, and we went into Walmart, and one day we went to Walmart, and the eggs, like a 60 count of eggs, was like $30, right? But we also have a Costco membership, and at Costco they were like $11-12 or something like that. It was just like a massive difference, right? So if you didn't have a Costco membership and you needed the 60 count eggs, and Walmart's where you particularly go, you were just going to get hammered. You were going to get charged double the price. And so you have to be mindful about how you could potentially try to save money. because sometimes you're not going to be able to. And I've kind of, gotten to the point to where I'm not really in the now, like paying attention to right now, but I'm looking down the line. Like a lot of my tools that I bought for my wood shop, I'm thinking about things like if I need to, like, say, like moving. Like let's think about moving for a second. Like if you were going to move, or if you were forced to move, whatever the case may be. Like a lot of the furniture that we buy is for a very nice, like an aesthetic look. We don't necessarily, furniture isn't necessarily designed with moving in mind. It's designed with the mindset of you put it in a room, you leave it there, you use it to function. You don't think about the fact that, oh my goodness, one day I'm going to have to move, and this couch, I have to take the door off the hinges to get this in and out. Or like when you think about IKEA furniture, most of it, not all of it, but most of it, if you take it back apart after assembling it, it's not going to ever go back together and be quite as robust as it is when it's brand new. So that's one. And then if you do try to carry it in its, built state, you have to be very careful, because it's not really great for like lateral movement to the left and the right, and thus forth. It could be damaged and go through very easily. Now, if you as an individual learn how, like if you think about a lot of IKEA furniture and these in Walmart and all that, this stuff is made up of particle board. It's made up of MDF and all these things. Some of it with melamine on it. Some of it with, maybe thin veneers of wood. And if you were to train yourself in how to make a basic cabinet, how to veneer wood, how to veneer or put what is it called, laminate on MDF and particle board, you could potentially make the things that you would buy from IKEA at that price at a cheaper price. And it may not come out as cheap in one aspect, but it could also be something that is better suited for your environment, because when you go and buy things that are non-custom off the shelf, it may not fit in your personal living space as well as if you had something custom built. And we already know if you're going to get something custom built, it's going to be quite expensive to have that done. So if you personally, take it on as, some people call it a hobby, I call it like personal growth, and you decide, I'm going to learn how to work on a car, I'm going to learn how to build a basic cabinet, I'm going to learn how to do these things. And you think in mind too, like if you build, let's say, a TV stand that, it looked aesthetically okay, but it also had the ability, say you have like, if you have like a gaming console on there, you have your TV built into it, and all your little accessories, maybe an audio video thing, and it has wheels built on it, but it looks nice and, decent. And then say, for instance, if you're ever forced to move, you don't have to unpack everything off of that thing, but rather you just unlock the wheels and you roll it, and you build it, you design it so that it'll fit right through a regular doorway. You design it to where the TV is secured within that cabinet or on that cabinet so that it doesn't fall off or tussle off. And like maybe if you have DVDs on the bottom, or even, as I said, gaming consoles and stuff like that on this device, DVD player, everything would be kind of in a position to where you don't have to remove anything from it. Or say if you had a bookshelf or a media cabinet and it had all your DVD collection on it, and on the bottom it had these wheels, so that if you did have to move in a pinch, you could just roll it right out the door. And if, as I've mentioned before, I'm into more, square modular, square designs, not all of these kind of, fancy different types of designs. Then, I'm thinking all the way down, like, okay, what is the size of a U-Haul truck? If you ever had to, God forbid, use storage, what is the size of a storage bin? And you take all those measurements and you think about, okay, if I built a TV stand, if I built a media stand, if I built, even something to, hold like a speaker for an audio video setup, and you think about maximizing space, very similar to like if you was like a UPS, RPS truck loader, you put things in there to where you can cram the most in that you possibly can. And if you developed a system like that for your home, because, we hear this thing all the time now about you will own nothing and be happy. So whether you own a home, your house taxes, your house insurance can go up so high to where maybe that's not plausible. I mean, I ended up hearing a video or something where a person's house taxes, because their house was reassessed, went up $1,500 a month. How many of you have $1,500 to give to, like, whether it be your city, your state, your government, for taxes on your home in addition to your house payment, right? So you have to be thinking from that mindset. That right there could put a person, or say you're living in a place and you're renting and the rent just shoots up astronomically. It's not cool to have to think like this, but it's, I guess in one way, it's almost like just being a doomsday prepper if you think about it, because the doomsday prepper type of person is like storing canned goods, maybe they're storing weapons, and, they're learning how to live off the land and doing all of these things that people that live in modern society, maybe in the city, think it's absolutely crazy. And maybe it is crazy to a lot of people, but if you're a person like the doomsday prepper, you're forward thinking. If you're a person that is living in an apartment and eventually I'm not going to be living in this apartment, well, then it would behoove you to buy things, especially because my mindset is to try to be as independent as I possibly can, to not have to use outside help as much as I can, because I find that, especially in a capitalist type of world, if you need something, the price is higher. If you don't need it, the price is typically low, right? But if you absolutely need something, the price can be as high as whatever. And so the first step is to not have to need someone to do something. And some methods that I look into, as if you happen to see in the video when I was changing the gas, the fuel filter on this 2003 Dodge Ram 1500, I bought a motor hoist, which is not directly designed to lift a truck bed off of a truck, but as I saw other people do it and I got the idea from them, I was able to lift the motor hoist up off of my truck, or I was able to lift the truck bed up off of my truck with the motor hoist so that I could actually change out that fuel filter. Now, I can't lift that myself. Same thing. My wife and I were able to lift the tonneau cover off of my vehicle when we were younger. But now that we're older, we have to consider the fact that, hey, one of us may get injured. And so now that I have that motor hoist, I can just use that to actually remove the motor hoist. Not the motor hoist, remove the tonneau cover off of the truck so that I would be able to, move it whenever I need to, when I need that off of my vehicle. And, so giving yourself the ability, through whether it be buying tools, whether it be planning different and better, to be able to give yourself some independence. So I know a lot of people, may, watch my channel, watch some of my footage, why does he buy all these tools? Why does he have all this stuff? And it's simply that, I'm thinking ahead in regards to, like, I see a lot of people that end up moving off grid and, starting, from scratch and doing things. And a lot of them have a lot less than what I have now, and they do pretty well. And that's great. But what if you had more? What if you decided you were going to move off grid somewhere and do all of this, these things, move to somewhere like northern Arizona where you can actually live on land in a, like say in an RV, But what you have to have is like septic, and you have to pay, some kind of a fee or whatever. And, what would make that easier if you were going to make that transition? Well, I mean, a lot of people may take their money and they'll go out and buy, like, say, I don't know, anything, like, say, a luxury person. They may think it's worthwhile to put $10,000 down on, say, a Tesla because, it's cool and it's nice and it's fancy, or to pay $10,000 to put in, like, the power wall to charge a Tesla in your home. And, that's cool. That sounds great and all that. But imagine if you took that $10,000 and you bought, like, say, some type of excavator, either a used one or maybe you bought a mini excavator, and say you were going to move off grid and you own this excavator. Well, it's going to make it so much easier for you to do things like dig out a foundation for your property, for any kind of home or shelter you're going to build. It's going to be so much easier to do doing it with tools than it would be doing it by hand, right? So at that point, the only thing you would have to do is worry about transporting, fuel for that particular device. If you were moving off grid and you, like, say, as you, like, say, are gainfully employed in a decent place, if you bought things like equipment for solar, you learned about solar, even though you don't need it, where you're at, you're on the grid, you're whatever. But if you actually start acquiring that knowledge and shifting your money towards things that help you, live that life. Now, in a lot of ways you may feel like, I hope that never happens. I hope that I never have to live in that way, which is great. But what if you do? If you don't have, whether it be friend support, if you don't have family support, if you don't have certain things that will make this life easier for you, then that means that you have to figure out how to do it yourself. And I don't know about you, but I've discovered that this life is not free. And as a result of knowing that this life is not free, that means that I have to figure out how to make my ends meet, how to accomplish as much as I need to accomplish, to make it day in and day out. This job here that I'm doing, yes, it took 3 days out of my life, which is a pain in the butt. But my truck is stopping now, perfectly fine. And, let me just add insult to injury. In the process, because I had to make multiple trips to go get parts for this truck, I ended up, once I got the brakes and calipers on, and I don't know, you may see it here in the video if you have a keen eye. I didn't know this before because, as I said, I'm not an experienced mechanic. I actually put the calipers on. Well, I did something that I never did before, which is I took the calipers off and the rotors off, and I took the stuff to the store, and I did the what do you call that? The exchange, because they actually have a core charge for the calipers. I did it right there on the spot. And as a result, I didn't take mental note of which one goes on which side, because I never knew that you could actually, put them on the opposite sides. So I actually put the calipers on the wrong side, which meant that the bleeder screws were facing down as opposed to up. And so what led me from day 2 to day 3 of this repair, day 3 was on Saturday, day 2, I got it all done. I got it all back together, new rotors, new brakes, new calipers, and my brake pedal was going completely to the floor. And I didn't know what I had done wrong. I bled the brakes like, 10 different times. I bought this tool from Harbor Freight that allows you to use like your compressor to bleed the system. I bought the handgun bleeder. I bought the, one-man kit bleeder. All of these different tools to try to get the brakes bled. I even did the old school method of having my wife push down on the gas pedal while I worked all of the bleeder screws, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the brakes to bleed properly. And so that night, on Saturday night, I was watching a video, and I came across this guy that basically said, make sure that, you know, you put the calipers on the correct side, the bleeder screw should be facing up as opposed to down, or else you're going to have problems with bleeding your brakes. And then that was my aha moment, and I realized, okay, that's what I did wrong. And I went out on Sunday and I changed it all around. But by this time, you know, I'm like tired, exacerbated, or whatever, and I'm not really as focused as I need to be. But I got the job done, and that on that Sunday rather, that's when I actually snapped the bolt off as well with the torque wrench. And on one side, I ended up having to go back to the old caliper bracket because the bolt is broke off. The caliper bolt is broke off in the mounting bracket. So on one side I have a new mounting bracket. On the other side I have the old mounting bracket. I thought I was going to have to go back to the store and buy a whole new caliper, but fortunately I didn't have to do that. And yeah, I mean, I learned a lot during this brake job as far as, like, you know, having to, you know, make sure the calipers are on the right side. And then also, I also learned that you have to be mindful that the people that work at AutoZone may not necessarily know your vehicle. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not making proper notes yourself, you could be given the wrong part. And, you know, if I didn't have a second vehicle to get me to and fro, that could have been kind of, you know, messed up, you know. But oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is I may be in the market for getting another car. It may be that my 30-year-old car, the Saab, may be gone through. When I went up to go get the final parts for my truck, it just started to smoke a lot, and I gotta tear the engine apart. I'm thinking to try to see if maybe it was a head blown or what. I changed the oil. I do everything I need to do with that vehicle. You know, eventually cars just get old and they just, you know, they go through their life. And the fact that I can't find any extra parts for this vehicle, it may be the end of the road for the Saab, but we'll see. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I will see you in my next one. Take care.